Hey fellow classmates and viewers on YubTub. Today I want to say hi to you because welcome to my presentation on a book, which is Diary of a Wimpy Kid Book 1. It's a pretty good book. Now, Diary of a Wimpy Kid Book 1 is an amazing book, and I've read it many times. So I know a lot about it, and I just want to do a book report on it because I like the book. You may be asking yourself, where do we start? Well, of course, we start at the first page. Now, after reading that, tell me what you think about it. In my opinion, it's pretty funny, and I think this is a very iconic start for a new book series. Now, if you read this page, you would know what it's about. Greg is talking about how he's gonna be famous. Actually, we haven't got there yet, but Greg is saying how he is writing in a journal, but his mom bought a thing saying diary on it. And he doesn't want people getting the wrong thing, like a jerk coming up. Then there comes the second page, and I want to say something about the second page. This is where I want to discuss how Greg is kind of narcissistic and a sociopath, and not the best of people. Greg is a bad person? Not surprising. Just read the second page, and you'll see the beginning of Greg's villain arc. And here is the second page where Greg starts talking about how he'll be quote-unquote famous and how he's gonna write this journal so people in the future can have their questions answered that they'll want to ask. But it's obvious Greg will never become famous. Now, a lot in the book later, Greg will routinely say that he will be famous and popular and rich, and and there's other people who can impact how he is in the book, and I want to say their roles in the story and how they affect Greg's personality and how Greg responds about them. Now I feel like it's time to talk about the characters! The first character I want to talk about is Roderick. Roderick is Greg's older brother and owns a rock band called Loaded Diaper. Roderick also occasionally bullies Greg in the book series, and he starts doing it in the first book, of course. Here's a few pages that are about Roderick in this book that I want you guys to read. So, here they are. So yeah, now you get a bit of an idea on what kind of person Roderick is.
Next person transition. Sound effect.
The next character I want to discuss is Raleigh Jefferson, Greg's trusty rusty dusty quote-unquote best friend. Huh? What's with the change in music? Well, let me tell you why. Because this one is gonna be a longer one. But also because Greg is going to bully the crap out of Raleigh. Like, Raleigh is a victim towards Greg. I originally saw Raleigh as a screw-up, but the more I read the book and the more I see other people's reviews, the more I feel less bad for Greg and more bad for Raleigh. Like, this kid gets bullied, and I'm gonna show you. So the first time Greg mentions Raleigh in his journal, he talks about how about popular people and how he has this whole thing where he compares everybody's popularity, and he has like numbers for the different popularity ranks, and the first page to suggest Raleigh is when Greg is talking to his friend, who's Raleigh, of course, and he's trying to explain to Riley about the thing and says that Riley is not popular and makes himself seem like he's a lot popular than Riley. Then the next page with Riley, Greg starts talking about how he's very mad at Riley because of an incident where Riley came up to Greg and said, "Hey, do you want to play?" Because he wanted to hang out with Greg, and that embarrassed him because Greg doesn't do play dates anymore, even though hanging out with somebody and play dates are the same thing, and I don't see the problem with it. So how Greg and Riley became friends was basically when Greg was in 4th grade, or the summer after his 3rd grade year, Riley came up to Greg and started doing jokes so he could become Greg's friend. But Greg didn't really ever become friends with him and kind of was mean about it. But then, Greg decided, hey, I can pull all the pranks my older brother pulls on me. And so, that's the reason he wants to be friends with Riley. Kind of manipulative and kind of rude. And that's why Greg is kind of a bad person. And so Greg does start doing this to Riley and manipulates him throughout the book. Wow, such a good friend. Okay, now it's time for a speed run. I am gonna speed run through the pages with Riley in it.
First one, Riley and Greg start a haunted house after being at a haunted house, and they bully a kid. The haunted house ends, and Greg blames Riley. For Halloween, Greg and Riley decide to trick or treat, and they go to Snake Road, which has some teenagers, and the teenagers terrorize them. Then Greg and Riley try to get their revenge, and the two boys ran away. Then Greg makes a homemade bench press, has Riley exercise on it. Greg never tries it out himself, and purposely makes Riley be worn out so he can torture him. Then at one point, Riley buys Greg a 3-wheeled bicycle thingy, and Greg decides to make a new game with it.
And the game is Riley has to ride as fast as he can down the hill while Greg tries to knock him down with a football. Obviously, things end up being bad for Riley, and he breaks his arm. And Greg becomes a brat.
Then Greg gets jealous that Riley's getting all this attention, so he tries to fake an injury, fails, and kind of bullies Riley. Then the final thing I want to say is, so Greg decides to join the safety patrol, which is a thing for a group of kids who will help walk kids to school. Greg and Riley just hang out. Greg brings Riley into the safety patrol, and then one day Greg uses Riley's coat because he needs a raincoat because it's raining outside. But then one day Greg sees the cars of the teenagers, or he thinks so. So he scares some kids by terrorizing them to have them hide in a hole. But it turns out that it wasn't the teenagers, and Greg gets in trouble. But Greg blames Riley because he's wearing Riley's coat, and Riley gets in trouble. And yeah, Greg just did some mean thing.
Now these final characters I'm gonna speedrun, but the next characters I'm gonna talk about are Frank Heffley and Susan Heffley, aka Greg's parents. Okay, so Greg's dad is kind of a deadbeat, and Greg is addicted to video games. So Greg's dad will try to get Greg to touch grass, and also to get Greg to exercise. But Greg kind of is a smart aleck and lazy, so he just washes himself in some sprinklers, runs to Riley's house to play video games, and bam, good for him. But yep, that's dumb. Now we won't be able to have enough time to get into Frank being a deadbeat part of the video, but also Frank isn't really a deadbeat in the first book, but he's very absent in the first book, and see him as a deadbeat more in later books. And then there's Greg's mom, aka Susan Heffley, and Susan Heffley is kind of a Karen, literally, and I just want to show you that. So part of the reason Susan is a Karen is because she's always obsessed with, like, making the family famous, and she acts like every one of her kids are super gifted and talented, She can never really help educate her children, and she kind of is just annoying. And also she spoils the crap out of Manny, who's the youngest and is Greg's younger brother. The next character I want to talk about is Manny Heffley, Greg's little brother, who is kind of just mean and annoying, but later books and even this book you can see that he's very smart for his age. So Manny also gives Greg this annoying nickname called Bubby and gets away with it. And then Manny takes dumps in this plastic potty thing and dumps all his cereal in it. So Greg can be tortured and has to clean it all up. Yeah, and that's how Manny is throughout the majority of the book. And that's it for Manny. I've discussed all the characters and now it's time to talk about the ending. So basically how the book ends is Greg and Riley get in a fight, but then a bunch of teenagers show up out of nowhere. And then the teenagers make Greg and Riley eat this cheese from a blacktop. Basically the story is the cheese was on the blacktop one day and a kid touched it and basically, you know the cheese touch? That's a story from Darwin Wimpy Kid. Basically, Greg and Riley are forced to eat the cheese, but Greg gets out of it by saying he's allergic to dairy. So Riley has to eat the cheese. And so Riley ate the cheese and was traumatized. Later, the next day, some people noticed that there was something that someone ate some of the cheese, and Greg noticed how much Riley would be embarrassed, and so he decided to speak up and say he ate the cheese. And so middle school and Greg and Riley became friends again, and now the book is over, so the video will now end. And now it is the end. Bye. I think it's pretty cool that it ends with Greg becoming a good person, but I've discussed everything that's important to me that will give me a good grade, so bye!